Kill my baby. I don't wish this on nobody.
Hi, baby. Hey.
What you want to say about the baby?
Drink hi, baby. Hey.
What you want to say about the baby?
Drink hi, baby.
When 4-year-old Javeayah Harris was reported missing, an entire community rushed to help find her. But investigators soon came to believe the search had started weeks too late, and before long, the two people responsible for protecting Javeayah most became the focus of the case, her own parents. Javeayah Kemauni Harris was only 4 years old. In the photographs shared while people were looking for her, she had wide, bright eyes and a soft smile. She looked like what she was, a little girl at the very beginning of her life. At that age, the world is supposed to feel safe. Home is supposed to be the place where somebody feeds you, comforts you, and notices right away when you're not there. A 4-year-old cannot make an emergency plan. She cannot call around and explain that something is wrong. She depends on the adults caring for her to speak, act, and protect her. For Javeayah, those adults were her father, 23-year-old Johmarea Harris, and her mother, 22-year-old Michilae Harris. The family lived in Aiken County, South Carolina, near Hillsborough Street. Very little about Javeayah's everyday life had been made public when this case first reached the news. That matters because it would be easy to fill the silence with guesses. We are not going to do that. What was publicly known was simple. Javeayah was 4. She was living with the people expected to care for her. Then she was reported missing. At first, the case looked like every family's worst fear. A young child had disappeared near her home, and nobody knew where she had gone. The report came in on the night of June 30th. Once authorities were alerted, the response grew fast. Deputies began searching the area around Hillsborough Street. Other agencies joined them. The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division became involved. The FBI assisted as well. Crews searched on foot and from the air. Helicopters moved above the area. Drones were used to scan places that were difficult to see from the ground. Search dogs were brought in. Teams worked across woods, roads, and open land, looking for anything that might point them toward Javeayah. This case is already heavy, and we are only at the beginning. Follow Deep Crimes TV for more stories told with care, facts, and respect for the people at the center of them. The search eventually covered more than 3,000 acres. Think about that scale for a moment. One missing child, surrounded by miles of land, and every section had to be treated like it might hold the answer. Searchers were not looking for a grown person who could shout from a distance or find a road on her own. They were looking for a 4-year-old. That meant checking places adults might overlook. It meant paying attention to small spaces and following every possible lead. The hours mattered. The summer conditions mattered. And the longer the search continued without finding her, the more worried everyone became. Law enforcement asked the public to stay alert. The case spread beyond the immediate neighborhood. Javeayah's name and photograph moved through news reports and social media. People who had never met her now knew her face. The public image of the case was clear. A child was missing. Agencies were working together, and the goal was to bring her home. But there was one question sitting underneath everything. When had Javeayah truly disappeared? That question would eventually change the whole meaning of the search. During those first days, though, crews still had ground to cover. They followed the information available to them. They kept moving. They kept looking. The effort was large. Local deputies were joined by state and federal resources. A large number of people took part across the operation. Equipment was brought in. Areas were searched in organized sections. The work continued even as no clear sign of Javeayah appeared. For the people watching from Aiken County and beyond, the waiting was painful. A missing child case creates a particular kind of fear because the person at the center of it has so little power. Javeayah could not tell the public what had happened. She could not explain where she had been. Every answer had to come from evidence, witnesses, and the adults around her. And at that point, the adults closest to her were also the people investigators needed to understand. Authorities had to establish a timeline. They had to determine when Javeayah had last been seen, what happened inside the home, and why the report was made when it was. A search can tell investigators where someone is not. It does not automatically tell them what happened. So while crews covered the land, interviews and investigative work continued. The case was no longer only about locating a child. It was becoming a closer examination of the story that had placed everyone there. Still, the public did not yet have the full picture. All they could see was the scale of the response: helicopters overhead, dogs on the ground, drones scanning from above, and teams moving through thousands of acres. Every new hour without Javeayah made the same question louder. Where was she? The search went on for days. Hope remained part of the effort because that is what a rescue search requires. Until investigators have evidence telling them otherwise, they work to find the missing person alive. At the same time, detectives were gathering information that would point them in another direction. By the time officials addressed the public with a major update, this was no longer the case people thought they had been following. The search had begun with the belief that a little girl had recently gone missing from her home. Investigators now believed the truth reached back much further. They would say Javeayah may already have been dead for at least a month before the missing person report was made. That meant the helicopters, the dogs, the drones, and the team searching acre after acre may have been working from a timeline that was wrong from the start. And once that timeline shifted, attention turned directly toward Javeayah's parents. Investigators had started with a report that a 4-year-old girl had recently gone missing. Now, they said the evidence pointed to a child who had already been dead for weeks. That changed the entire case. The original report had sent teams into the area around Javeayah's home. Every hour of work began with the hope that she might still be found alive. But if the new timeline was correct, then she had not disappeared that night at all. So now the question was no longer only where Javeayah was. Investigators also had to determine what happened to her, when it happened, and who knew the truth before the call for help was made. The report came from the home where Javeayah was supposed to be protected. Yet authorities said the emergency response began long after she could have been saved. Make it make sense. For the public, there was no easy way to connect those two versions of events. One had a little girl vanishing and a family needing help. The other had a child believed dead for at least a month before anyone officially reported her missing. Detectives were conducting interviews, examining the timeline, and following evidence that had not been released. Officials did not explain every step, but they made clear that the case had moved beyond suspicion. Before we get to the announcement that changed everything, tap the like button and tell us in the comments which part of this timeline raises the biggest question for you. Within days of the missing child report, Johmarea Harris and Michilae were arrested. Both were charged with homicide by child abuse in connection with Javeayah's death. Michilae was also charged with filing a false police report. Those are accusations, not convictions. Neither parent had been found guilty in court. Prosecutors would still have to prove what happened and what role they believed each person played. The arrests marked a complete change. Javeayah's parents were now defendants accused in her death. Sheriff Marty Sawyer called the announcement the hardest moment of his 36 years in law enforcement. The rescue mission had become a recovery effort and a criminal case. Johmarea and Michilae were taken to the Aiken County Detention Center. Bond was denied. A bond hearing is not a trial. It addressed whether either defendant would be released while the case moved forward. Further decisions were left for a circuit court judge. Under South Carolina law, a conviction for the most serious form of homicide by child abuse can carry 20 years to life in prison. But the court process could not answer the most urgent question yet. Javeayah had still not been found. The search did not end when the arrests were announced. It changed from rescue to recovery. Authorities said they were searching an area of interest outside Aiken County while continuing to use major law enforcement resources. Attention moved north to the Great Falls area. Crews also searched around Javeayah Creek, where access was restricted while agencies worked near the water. State investigators assisted from the air. Other teams used boats, drones, and all-terrain vehicles. The new search area was roughly 2 hours from Javeayah's home. Something in the investigation had led detectives elsewhere. Officials did not publicly explain what that connection was. They did not say what evidence pointed toward that area. They did not release a confirmed cause of death. They did not describe what they believed happened inside the home. And they did not publicly lay out the separate actions they were alleging against each parent. Those gaps matter. A child's death is not a space for rumors. Until investigators release evidence, many parts of this case remain unknown. What was known was already devastating. Authorities believed Javeayah had been dead for at least a month. They believed the missing person report came too late to save her. They had arrested both parents on homicide by child abuse charges, and they were still searching for the little girl whose picture had been shown across the community. Recovering Javeayah could help investigators confirm how she died. It could provide physical evidence and test the timeline they had developed. Most of all, it could return her to the extended family trying to understand what happened. That is why the work continued after hope of finding her alive was gone. Search teams focused on land and water. Agencies from different areas worked together. Detectives still had witnesses to question, records to review, and evidence to compare. The sheriff said additional charges were possible. He did not say what those charges might be, so it would be wrong to guess. The same caution applies to motive. No verified motive had been released. There was no public explanation for why Javeayah was allegedly harmed, why the report was delayed, or why authorities believed the story given to them was false. A 4-year-old depended on the adults around her for everything. According to investigators, she died, time passed, and only then did the call come in that launched the search. So what happened during that missing month? Who last saw Javeayah alive? What evidence convinced detectives that both parents should face the same homicide charge? And where had Javeayah been while hundreds of people were searching around her home? Those questions were now at the center of a homicide investigation. As the parents remained in custody, the recovery effort continued outside Aiken County. Javeayah's extended family asked for privacy. The community was left waiting for the update everyone needed most. They wanted to know that she had been found. But while the search continued, people in Aiken began creating another kind of place for Javeayah, one built not from evidence or court filings, but from candles, stuffed animals, flowers, and the color pink. That grief did not change the central problem. Javeayah was still missing. The arrests gave the public a clearer idea of what investigators believed, but they did not bring her home. Search teams still had work to do, and the case still depended on evidence that had not been found or had not been made public. At the latest update, authorities were continuing the recovery effort outside Aiken County. They had not announced that Javeayah had been located. They had not released a cause of death or explained what evidence led them to believe she had died at least a month before the missing person report. That left the community facing two painful realities. Investigators believed Javeayah was dead, and the people who loved her still did not have her back. Finding her could help establish where she had been, how long she had been there, and whether physical evidence supported the investigators' timeline. It could also give Javeayah's relatives the chance to lay her to rest. Until then, every unanswered question remained attached to a little girl who could not speak for herself. Johmarea Harris and Michilae remained accused in the case. Both faced homicide by child abuse charges, while Michilae also faced an accusation that she filed a false police report. They were being held without bond. Those charges are serious, but they are not proof of guilt. No trial had taken place, and no final account of Javeayah's last days had been established in court. The state would still have to prove what happened and how each defendant was connected to her death. That distinction matters. People can be angry, heartbroken, and full of questions without turning unconfirmed details into facts. Javeayah deserves a truthful account, not a story built from internet rumors. And there was still a lot the public did not know. Authorities had not identified a motive. They had not publicly described the alleged abuse. They had not said which parent they believed took which action. They had not explained the delay in reporting Javeayah missing or the evidence that directed the search toward another county. For now, the honest answer is that the full story has not been released. What has been released tells us something important about Javeayah herself. Officials described her as smart, talkative, and friendly. She loved Minnie Mouse. She liked to chase chickens. Those details are small, but they matter. They move her beyond the language of charges, searches, and police briefings. You can picture a child laughing while running after a chicken or getting excited when she saw her favorite cartoon character. Girl at 4 years old, that is what life should have been about. Not search grids, not court hearings, not people trying to work out why an emergency call came weeks too late. Javeayah should be remembered for the person she was becoming, not only for the allegations connected to her death. The community response showed how deeply one child's disappearance could reach. Local crews worked beside state and federal agencies. Volunteers offered their time. Neighbors checked their property. People shared Javeayah's photograph and watched for any sign of her. Most of them had never met her. They searched anyway. That effort did not become meaningless when the investigation changed direction. The searchers responded to the information they had.
A 4-year-old girl who disappeared out of Aiken County has ties to the upstate. Deputies say Javeayah Harris disappeared on Tuesday.
And tonight, Arshel Ramin is speaking with a woman who used to be the little girl's neighbor in Union County.
Well, Sydney, this neighbor used to live in the exact same apartment complex as Javeayah and her family. She says the neighborhood would take turns checking in on this little girl and her well-being. Despite all of that manpower deputies have on the ground in Aiken County, she says something in her heart is not sitting well back here in the upstate.
She real sweet and she real timid. Like, if she don't know you, she's not gonna just walk up to you or nothing like that.
A sweet 4-year-old little girl has sparked national headlines as her disappearance out of Aiken County has now reached more than 2 days.
As a parent and a grandparent of young children, this investigation hits close to home. We know that this family is living a nightmare. And we are doing everything we can to bring Javeayah home.
The Aiken County Sheriff saying about 200 specialized law enforcement officers have now completed their main grid search, an effort of more than 3,000 acres.
We've been supported in that by helicopters, drones, and dogs. The FBI is on scene assisting with analytical data, and they have trained personnel on the ground who specializes in investigating missing children cases.
We're on the phone with Miss Young, a woman who knew the family after living nearby at an apartment complex in Union.
When they moved away, everybody's number one concern was, where is she taking this baby? Where is they going?
Authorities say the 4-year-old's mother reported her missing Tuesday night, last seen near a chicken coop, a detail not sitting right with neighbors we spoke with.
When they say that the baby left out their yard, that's unbelievable, because anytime her mama left her in the house for days, all the time for hours.
While the sheriff's office describes Javeayah as talkative and friendly, Miss Young says she didn't like to wander, but to stay in her comfort zone.
She real sweet. She would not cross the road. She won't walk by herself. Nothing. She like to hold people's hands when she walks. Even when she walks to the refrigerator, she still want to hold your hand.
At just a little over 40 pounds, deputies say Javeayah was wearing pink Minnie Mouse pajamas and Crocs when she vanished.
Different neighbors around in the same apartment complex went and got this baby, fed her, bathed her, put her on new clothes, and sent her back home. So it wasn't just me. It was different people in the neighborhood that noticed the same exact thing.
Now, the Aiken County Sheriff says the greatest thing to do for this family right now is to continue to pray. They have digital billboards up of little Javeayah, and there is a tip line set up for anyone with information about her disappearance, which you can see right there on your screen. Sydney.
Gail, thank you.
They gave their energy to a child they believed might still be waiting for someone to find her. The sheriff thanked the agencies, fire crews, search teams, and community members who helped. He also said the search would continue because bringing Javeayah home remained important. Her extended family asked for privacy while they faced the news. Their grief belongs to them. They should not have to answer public demands for details investigators have not released. For everyone else, this case leaves a responsibility. When a young child disappears, investigators need to know when that child was last independently seen, who had access to her, what explanation was given, and whether that explanation matches the evidence. That does not mean the public should accuse people based on gossip. It means concerns about a child's safety should be taken seriously and reported through the proper channels. Maybe a child stops appearing where neighbors normally see her. Maybe explanations about her whereabouts keep changing. Maybe someone notices injuries, neglect, or fear. One observation may not reveal the full truth, but speaking up can give trained professionals a chance to check. And when no one speaks, a child may remain alone in a situation she has no power to escape. Javeayah was 4 years old. She relied on adults to notice, tell the truth, and call for help. According to the sheriff, help came too late. The investigation now has to determine how that happened. Recovery teams have to keep following the evidence, and the courts, not social media, will have to decide whether the state can prove its allegations against Johmarea and Michilae. For anyone with direct information, even something that appears minor, the proper step is to contact the Aiken County Sheriff's Office. A detail that seems unimportant by itself may help investigators confirm a movement, a location, or a point in the timeline. Javeayah Kemauni Harris was not just the child at the center of a major search. She was a smart, friendly little girl who loved Minnie Mouse and chased chickens. Her life mattered before the public knew her name, and it still matters now. The case remains unfinished. Javeayah still deserves to be found, her family deserves truthful answers, and every allegation deserves to be tested by evidence. May her name be remembered with care, and may the truth about what happened to her come into the light. Thank you for staying with Javeayah's story. Like this video, subscribe to Deep Crimes TV, and turn on notifications. Then watch another case on the channel when you are ready. Based only on the facts released so far, which warning sign in this case stands out most to you?